I would say to make sure that your finances are really in a good spot, when you're trying to start a new company and you're financially stressed, you're making really hectic decisions, right? I think of it like when you jump into freezing cold water, you start making decisions that you typically wouldn't. So just making sure, sometimes I talk to like entrepreneurial classes at Bethel University here, and I always tell them, you get more money than you think you need. Like if you think you need 50K to start this, get 75. Like you can always pay back the loan super fast. So I would say, have a plan in place so that strategically you can make really confident decisions and invest in the company properly in the very beginning, so that you're not freaked out that you're going to lose the house or something like that, because now you can't focus on your business. And you're like, someone will ask you, hey, will you install my mailbox for $75? And you're like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute. And you run out there to get it done. And it's like, I don't even want to be installing mailboxes. I want to be taking care of your routine maintenance. So got to have enough capital in place so that you can confidently and strategically start and run your business.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Daniel Felt. And Daniel graduated in high school in a small town, and then went off to college where he got and thought he wanted to go into elementary education. Found out that he wasn't cut out for that, so he switched over to a business degree instead. And then started working for a business that produced eggs, if I'm not mistaken, and did that for and then a year and a half in, his brother contacted him and wanted him to work for him. So they then decided to start his own business, which he's doing now. Started that in about 2016, and then has been growing the business and starting some franchises in the meantime. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Daniel.
Awesome. Thank you, Devin. Appreciate it. Yeah, you were right. That company, they sold 6 million chicken eggs a day. So you are correct.
All right. Well, before we jump into the middle of your journey, let's go back a little bit more to unpack it. So tell us how your journey got started graduating from high school in a small town.
Yeah, for sure. Grew up on a farm, small town, driveway is half a mile long. So I'm that guy. Small town feel, had 5 siblings, still have 5 siblings actually. And my family raises and sells golden retriever puppies. So grew up in an entrepreneurial family. It was really cool to be part of that. I would say that kind of helped me give me the confidence to, at one point in life, start my own company. So I graduated high school, attended college, changed degrees there, like you mentioned, and working for
just one question on that, changing the degree. So I mean, because you originally indicated you were wanting to go into or thinking going into elementary education, and then decided to switch. Was it, hey, I hate kids and I don't want to be around them, or was, hey, I don't want to be a teacher and on my feet every day, or hey, I just don't have the passion? Kind of, how did you come to the realization that you weren't cut out for that, or that's not what you wanted to do?
Yeah, there was 2 main things that happened to me. One, in going through that degree, you have to shadow a teacher in the town for a semester. So 1 hour, 1 day a week you go. And at the end of that semester, the teacher sat down and he goes, I have some honest feedback for you. I go, yeah. He goes, you're not going to be a teacher. I'm like, what? And we'd gotten along really well. I was really taken back. He goes, no, you're going to be a principal. I'm like, what do you mean by that? He goes, your leadership skills, you're too strong of a leader, and you're not going to be a teacher. After a few years, you're going to be promoted through the system, and you're going to be a principal. So if you want to be a principal, continue on. And I was like, and I remember thinking back into school and seeing like the principal was there at like 6 a.m. The principal was there at like 9 p.m., like after the basketball games or things like that. And I just really wanted to have a work-life balance. And I thought that, so I was on the edge already. And then there was an issue where they put you in blocks. So you take like these exact 5 classes through college. And I was told to take like speech 101B. Well, I got all the way through the semester. I'm like 1 week in, and they call me into the office and they go, no, you were supposed to take 101A. And I'm like, no, you can see your handwriting right here where you told me. They're like, no, you just need to take a summer course, and then you'll get caught back up, and then you'll graduate. Well, I was paying for school myself. I was driving semi in the summers for a farmer, and you could deliver grain. I could get there around 4 or 5 a.m. and be one of the first ones at the plant to drop off the soybeans or the corn. And I was making good money in the summer, and that would pay for the next year of school. So I'm like, that's not going to work for me. Well, I walked out of that meeting and I said, I'm just going to study business. Based off everything I'm hearing from everyone, I want to be able to control my own future. And I made the switch.
I say, okay, I'm going to make the switch, and found out, through the experience of taking classes, having to take the wrong classes, being told that you're going to be a principal, looking for a different balance, and okay, that doesn't line up. Now, what made you kind of gravitate towards business, and kind of where did you go from there?
Yeah, I have of my siblings, my brother and I are squished between 4 girls, and he's older than me. And he was studying business, and he had started a company cleaning windows and installing holiday lights. And he was really successful. And watching him go through that journey, and he was, I don't know, kind of always tested the boundaries type individual. And I watched him succeed and in his business. And even though he was only a few years in at the time, he was doing really great. And I had a conversation with a few mentors, people who are brighter and smarter than me, start asking questions. And it seemed like the opportunity, and this is coming out of the 08, where the recession, right? Like there was difficulties. And the nice thing about the opportunity of studying business is you can really work anywhere. Like I could work in a dental office if I wanted to, helping run the office, a bigger one. There's so many genres, you're not limited to just one thing. So that was the main thing for me, was just study business if you don't know exactly what you want to do, and you'll have a skill set that you can really jump into almost any genre of business.
Oh, so now you're saying, okay, makes sense, going into business. And so you go get the degree, you're coming out of school. And how did you get into going and working for an egg company?
Yeah, they were actually based out of my hometown, Litchfield, Minnesota there. And I think it actually happened by mistake, just through small town connections. We got connected, and I went in for an interview the day I was graduating. So I already had my suit and tie, and went in for that interview and started on as an intern. And it was really unique situation at their company, because right as I was starting, they actually had a pretty big turnover of people. And so the day before I started, my boss called me and he said, "Hey, I know you're supposed to start tomorrow, and I know you're supposed to go through all the typical stuff like me in the office, but in your interview, you said you grew up on a farm and you know how to drive a skid steer. Is that correct?" I go, "Yep." He goes, "The person who drives the skid steer down in Iowa at our plant there is no longer with us. Could you be to Iowa at 7 a.m.?" And I was like, "You bet." And so I went down there and started just helping out any way I can. This is right out of college, and just kind of, not being above or below anything that needs to be done at the company. And that really helped me learn all the systems and processes within that company, and kind of led me into a step of where they were like, "Hey, since you know how to do all this stuff, you've stood side by side the people that are packing eggs." Because the way egg farms work, chicken farms, is you've got all the chickens are laying eggs, and that's the production side. Then they come through a conveyor belt, and then it turns into the processing side. So you either only deal with the chicken or you only deal with the egg at these places. And I was dealing with the egg. So from the time that egg came into the conveyor belt till it got on the semi, I created a system and a process, the SOP for that, in both Spanish and English at my time at that company. So really taught me a lot about how do you train someone in fast and very detailed, because that you got to put the egg carton in just a certain way so that it's done correctly for the grocery stores.
Oh, that's interesting. So you do that for, I think you did it for about a year and a half. Is that right?
Yep.
So now you're coming in, working at the egg business, figuring out how to make or maximize it, make it better, and getting some experience there. And then I think you mentioned, we talked before, that your brother had reached out to you or kind of said, "Hey, why don't you come join my business? Or I've got an opportunity for you." Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly. He was still running that window cleaning holiday light company, and they were at about 8 crews. And I think what had essentially happened for him is he was just, he was getting worn out, right? You've got 8 crews running. So I think it was roughly about, 12 or 14 employees at the time. He's just getting burnt out. He needed someone to help him manage and grow that. And in that 2 years I worked for him, just by having someone on his right-hand side, he's such a gifted business person. We doubled in size. We went from 8 to 16 crews in just 2 years, because he basically duplicated himself on the management side of his company, and we were able to grow really fast using the tools that we, taking tools from systems and processes from the egg company.
Now you get into that with your brother, and you start into the business. Now, How did it go? Was it a good experience? You know, because one of the things that is always interesting is when you introduce the additional dynamic. First of all, startups are always stressful and hard, and then you introduce the additional dynamic of the family, then it can sometimes make it even more, you know, more stressful, or it can make it great and you have a good relationship and a good foundation to build on. So as you're getting into that with your brother and working on the startup, how did it go?
You know, today we have a really good relationship, and he's one of my best friends. And through it, I would say we were really good friends. But I threatened to quit a few times before I actually left his company, because you know you work really hard in these service-based companies, especially in the seasonality of a holiday light or Christmas or window cleaning company. The lights, you can imagine, everyone wants their Christmas lights up the day before Thanksgiving. Well, today at the time we were doing about 2,000 houses in the fall. So you have to have all the tools and the equipment, and everyone's going. They're putting the max effort, and you're running as efficiently as possible. It's a really cool thing to be part of. Like when you're done and it's like December 15th and no one else wants their Christmas lights up anymore, you're like, thank goodness, and you can relax. But you know, then in the off season, there's still stuff to do. Time to organize inventory, organize the warehouse, all the trucks, you know, clean them up. You can imagine these trucks just get beat up pretty bad during, you know, these long days. And so we got along, I would say, significantly better than most people would have. And I think the reason why was because I always knew that it was his company and he was his in charge and I was his general manager. And I also felt very comfortable if something was going wrong in front of everyone, I felt really comfortable going into a closed meeting or going out for lunch or whatever and saying, hey, here's how this went. You know, in the future, I think it would go over better if we work together on this level. And so I think, you know, using the, you know, publicly praise, you know, privately correct, you know, type deal, privately disciplined, I tried to manage up in that way of saying, I think it would go better if you and I always agreed in front of everyone, or, you know, we didn't go back and forth on something like this. And I think that respect really helped out, because my brother is unemployable. He could never work for anyone. He's a really unique guy. And so just knowing that and knowing that it's his company and he's in charge at the end of the day, I think that really helped our dynamic. And it's a reason why we're still really good friends today.
No, and I think that, you know, and I think there is always that additional level of stress, and you have to figure that out. And you know, I think it sounds like you guys figured it out, and it worked out pretty well. So now, as you're doing that, I think at some point you decided to go off on your own, or to kind of do your own thing, or to split off from your brother and kind of chase your own dream. Is that right?
Yeah, the conversation came up actually. He had bought into a friend's company and they were doing property management. And so imagine you're a professional athlete, for example, and at that income level, and you have a home that you just want taken care of. You don't want to think about anything. If you want speakers put in your living room, you send a text message to your property manager and say, I want speakers put in, and it's done for you. So that comes with a price, and they had about 2 clients set up on that through my brother's customer base, and they were complaining that they wanted, you know, hey, we're stuck at 2 clients, how do we get more? You know, everyone needs this. And I gave the recommendation that rather than doing this really high end items, why don't you just reduce your, you know, service so that you're taking care of everything that every single homeowner needs and a majority of your customers could actually afford. And they essentially disagreed, and they said it's not part of our service model, and I couldn't drop it. I brought it up again the next month, and they laughed. They're like, dude, that's such a stupid idea, that will never work. And for me, my personality, if I really believe in something and someone says it'll never work, now you've kind of challenged me, and I'm gonna go for that. And that was the beginning of an intensive about 5 months with the research on the market, if anyone's offering this service, and ultimately led to me giving my brother about a 4-month notice that I was going to start my own gig.
Now you say, okay, I'm going to start. And I guess first their question was your brother, and not to throw your brother on their bus one way or the other, was he supportive? Was he excited for you? Was he sad to see you go? Kind of, how does that, you know, because it's a little bit different when you go into your boss and you say, hey, given my 2 weeks notice, I'm going to leave. Then they say, good luck to you, or we'll never see you again. You don't have to see each other at Christmas or around Thanksgiving dinner or anything else. When it's with family, you still have to see them. So kind of, how did that transition go with the conversation of, hey, I'm going to work, you know, working for you, to, I want to go chase my own dream?
Yeah, he was definitely significantly more supportive. I think, you know, it's mixed emotions, because you're, you know, now you're not going to see your brother on a daily basis, and, you know, he's not going to be working with you. So I think it was a little emotional, you know, not we didn't sit there and like hug it out and cry, but it was, it was emotional that, hey, we're going to separate ways here. At first, he didn't take me serious. I gave a 4-month notice, and then 3 months in, I'm like, hey, are you going to fill in behind me? Or, he's like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm like, do you want me to start interviewing people? He's like, and then 2 months, I'm like, David, I'm really leaving, like in August 1st, my last day. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And then in the beginning of July, he had provided a company vehicle for me, so I had to buy my own vehicle. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm leaving in a month. I got my own vehicle. I got to get decals on it. He's like, oh, you're serious? So he finally, I think he had heard a lot of people say like, I'm going to do it. But when you finally go out and you purchase the vehicle, he knew I was really serious then. But I would honestly say, Devin, it was as good as it could have been. And I couldn't imagine that better. But I think it helped because there was mutual respect there. Giving a 4-month notice, 3-month notice, those little things, just trying to really tread lightly to respect each other. That went well.
Oh, and I think that sounds like it was overall, you gave him plenty of time. You were supportive. He was supportive, even if he didn't quite believe you for a while, you're going to leave. Then you make the leap. Now, as you make the leap, there's always a difference when the rubber hits the road of, hey, I've done all this research. I think it's going to work. I'm going to make a go of it, to you actually get in the business. And it can be just as you dreamed and everything you hoped for, or it can be completely different. You miss the mark, or it can be somewhere in between. So as you make the leap over, how did it go? Was it everything you hoped for? Was it a lot harder? Was it much easier? You're a millionaire overnight, or kind of how did that go for you?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I did a few things. I was house hacking. So I lived in a home that was actually duplex, and I lived on the top floor, and I had rented out the basement for years before this. So that alone was paying about 2/3 of my mortgage by renting out the basement. I also, in growing up in a family dog business, whenever someone wanted somewhere to board in the metropolitan area, my mom would say, call my son. He has a fenced-in backyard and he'll do it. So between the renting out the basement and boarding dogs, I was making about $45,000 on the side, as a side gig. So that really provided enough where I'm not on the streets, which was really nice. And that gave me a lot of confidence. Additionally, I took out an equity line against my house for $32,000. So I had that equity line. If I didn't use it, it wasn't costing me anything. But if I started to use it, it was, a pretty small interest rate at the time. It was around I think it was right around 4% for if I wanted to use that line. So really had a buffer that I felt really confident in starting. And I started out. And the really interesting thing about starting a business is you tell everyone, because you're super excited about it, that, hey, I'm going to start this company. And I say it's 1,000, but it was at least 500 people said, that is such a great idea. That's going to be so successful. And so you get all gung ho and you launch your website and you get going on day one, and the phone doesn't ring and the submissions don't come in from the website. And all those people I told you it was a really good idea, they don't sign up. And it's like, well,
liars.
Yeah. It's like, hey, you said it was a really good idea. And the really common thing, if I followed up with someone that they actually hey, you're a qualified buyer, I know who you are. You don't take care of your home. And the common thing was yeah, it's a really good idea. My neighbor for sure needs your service. And I heard that all the time, or my sister-in-law needs you guys or whatever, but I can maintain my own home. Right. So that was really interesting for me. But in the very beginning, Devin, we actually were providing monthly visits. So during that time, I took a night online course to become a certified home inspector. So I knew what was going on in homes. I don't inspect homes. I never have, and I never will, but got that course. So I know what's going on in a townhome, a very simplistic mechanical, building. And then we have estates that are worth upwards, past $10 million. And we know how to maintain that home too today. So getting that course, I thought monthly visits would be great. And from August through December, I actually still helped out my brother a little bit. I would do holiday light estimates for him because his average holiday light customer at the time was about $850. And my mindset was, if you can afford to pay $850 for Christmas lights, you can probably provide one of my 3 monthly service options. And 11 people signed up during that time. And so I'd give you an estimate. I'd say, here's your price. Hey, by the way, we have an affiliate company offering routine home maintenance. Are you interested in that? And that got me my 11 first customers doing that.
Oh, that's awesome. And then I think that, I think that if I were to kind of or smile as you're saying, hey, everybody says they need it for their neighbor. It's always, sometimes when you ask people if it's a good idea, one is that they are trying too nice and they don't want to tell you no. Mm-hmm. And so you don't ever get that or good feedback, or even if they are genuinely doing it, they're not willing to pay for it. And they say, yeah, it's a good idea. You should do it. But I always find that, if you say, now, or are you willing to pre-purchase it or pre-order it, or are you going to give me some money to invest in it? Then you're
Mhm.
going to get it's probably not something that I would do, but I think other people would do. And that kind of always gives you
Right.
the true feedback. But I think it's one of those, sometimes you have to learn the lesson of, sift through, are people being nice, or maybe they're not the right customer base or who you should pursue after. So I love that kind of as a takeaway. So now bring us up to, so now you've been in business, and how long you've been doing the business for?
Yeah, so we're just turning 6 years old this year. So this year we're at, but I'll just tell you one big thing that we changed, Devin, talking about like customer expectations. I sat down that year, the week of Christmas, and I talked to a guy who was supposed to be a client. And I just asked him, I said, Joe, I understand you're not a customer, and that's totally fine. Will you just tell me why? And we sat down, it was past an hour, and had those conversations. And he said, realistically, I don't think you need to be in my house once a quarter or once a month. If you came quarterly, I would sign up right away. So I followed up with a ton of customers on January 2nd, and 11 more people signed on January 2nd, 2017. So that was really great. Fast forward to today, we now service over 560 homes in Minnesota alone. We have locations in Denver, Dallas, and Atlanta, and using that same principle of listening to customers and hearing what they want and offering that service. If it's within your scope, you can't be everything to everyone. So staying within your skill set and offering those services.
No, I think that sounds like it's an exciting place to be, and definitely been a fun journey. So, well, now as we kind of reach to the present day of your journey, and even looking just a bit to where you're headed, always have two questions I like to ask when we reach this point in the journey, which is the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Yeah. The absolute worst thing that we did was actually in 2021. We, based on demand on Google searches and everything else, we decided to launch a handyman division of our company. And the number one lesson that I learned is that craftsmanship is not scalable. So if a handyman can fix something like a hole in the wall, sheetrock in Minnesota, the handyman in Denver or Dallas or Atlanta may do it completely differently. And so craftsmanship is not scalable. It's really, really hard to manage that quality. And so we launched it. We were rocking and rolling. We had like 7 crews running at a certain point just in Minnesota. I think we had like 3 or 4 in Atlanta, Dallas, and 1 in Colorado. And it was so difficult to make money, especially with the rapid inflation rates of pricing. We'd buy material or like give a quote on material, and someone would sign on like 2 weeks later, and a piece of wood was like $5 more. It was insane. So ultimately, unfortunately, we had to just pull back, and it was actually kind of a unique situation for us because a few of the handymen that worked for us, I actually had conversations with them and helped them start their own companies and say, you have the skill set, and if there's fewer people involved in this and you can manage it, you could probably have your own successful smaller handyman division. And just was driving behind one of those guys' trucks the other day, so it's fun to see that those guys be successful. So that led right into hey, you have to stay within, you can't be everything to everyone. And ultimately we were not good at handyman stuff. We could do it, but where the pricing was way off, and ultimately we lost a lot of money offering that service.
No, and I think it's one of those, it's a balance, right? So when you're in a startup or small business, you're always balancing, hey, how can we expand? How can we get increased revenue? Where are the opportunities? And so sometimes, you can find some good places where it really makes sense and you can expand the business. And other times you're looking and saying, you chase kind of every opportunity, and some of them you stray outside your wheelhouse, and then it, can come around to not be a great opportunity. But I think that, my experiences, while not all of them are good, it shouldn't stop you from trying things out. In other words, sometimes it is that, hey, we've got to test it out. Okay, that was a bad idea. Let's not do that again. And we learn the lessons from it and how we figure out what is our wheelhouse and where we can expand into. But if you're always so worried that, hey, this isn't within our wheelhouse, you're never going to ever continue to improve the business. So I think it's one of those where you learn from mistakes, but it shouldn't shy away from trying new things out.
Right.
Second question I always ask it now is, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Yeah, I would say to make sure that your finances are really in a good spot. When you're trying to start a new company and you're financially stressed, you're making really hectic decisions, right? I think of it like when you jump into freezing cold water, you start making decisions that you typically wouldn't. So just making sure, sometimes I talk to like entrepreneurial classes at Bethel University here, and I always tell them, you get more money than you think you need. Like if you think you need 50K to start this, get 75. Like you can always pay back the loan super fast. So I would say, have a plan in place so that strategically you can make really confident decisions and invest in the company properly in the very beginning, so that you're not freaked out that you're going to lose the house or something like that, because now you can't focus on your business, and you're like, someone asks you, hey, will you install my mailbox for $75? And you're like, yeah, I'll be there in a minute, and you run out there to get it done. And it's like, I don't even want to be installing mailboxes. I want to be taking care of your routine maintenance. So got to have enough capital in place so that you can confidently and strategically start and run your business.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think, I think that's one of those that everybody thinks they're the exception to the rule, in the sense that, oh, I've got this figured out. I know exactly how much it's going to cost and won't be a penny more. And I'd say maybe 1% of the time that's right. For the other 99% of the time, it may not even cost you more. It may just take you longer. Maybe you budgeted right, but it takes you 3 times as long, or it takes you half the time, but it takes you twice as much. And I think always assuming it's going to take you long, even if you put in cushion, take that and put in more cushion, because usually you're still wrong. And I think it's one where everybody thinks they're exception to the rule, and nobody is the exception to the rule. And so I think that's definitely a great takeaway. Well, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, we're all over the place on the internet, all social medias. It's Cura Home, can be or curahome.com. That's KURA, curahome.com. If you want to reach out to me personally, LinkedIn is the absolute best way to do that, and you can find me there.
All right. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, check it out, and support a great business. And so with that, as we wrap up, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So let's go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, because we want to make sure everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Daniel, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin.